I've always been a writer. I'm pretty positive about that. I think I was a writer before I knew what the word meant. It's just a part of me. It's always been a part of me. I wasn't always great at it, but it was a part of me. But it took me a long time to get paid for doing it. That was kind of my goal in the beginning, was to make a living as a writer. I graduated from college with a journalism degree here in San Diego, at San Diego State, with a journalism degree, and I got hired out of college as a news writer and producer for the CBS affiliate here in San Diego. Then I went up to Los Angeles and worked there, the big market, number 2 market. And for a time, I enjoyed it. Then gradually, as time went on, I got burned out. Very common in the news business. I started to feel like my writing was mechanical and my creativity felt completely drained. There's only so much you can write in a 15-second news story, or even in a longer minute-and-a-half segment. And there just wasn't much room to be creative or to grow, or it felt very draining for me. So as you might imagine, by the time I got laid off, it felt more like an act of divine intervention than a misfortune for me. It was one of those situations where life kind of shoves you that way, you go that way, and you don't want to go that way, but you're forced to go that way, and it ends up being where you need to go anyway. So after that happened, I still had to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life. I knew I still wanted to be a writer. There was no question about that. I just wasn't sure what I wanted to write anymore. And I also knew it was time to take the leap, figure out my dreams and follow them. After finally figuring out what they were, I started my first novel, a forensic paranormal thriller called While the Savage Sleeps. And as I did, page by page, I felt my passion for the written word coming back to life. Unfortunately, at the same time, life threw me a curve. I don't remember much about sitting in the doctor's office, except for hearing the word malignant. I remember talking about treatment options. I remember looking at the dark blob on the screen. But all I could really think about was, is this really it? It was a realistic question. And suddenly all my priorities shifted. Everything changed for me. It was no longer a matter of what to do with the rest of my life. It was how long the rest of my life was really going to be. In the weeks that followed, I did the only thing I knew how to do when things got rough. I wrote. I kept writing, and I didn't stop. I wrote from my hospital bed after they removed my kidney, part of my kidney, most of my kidney, and I wrote in the weeks that followed. I just kept writing. I basically wrote my way through the recovery. Those words would later be published in Chicken Soup for the Soul, the cancer book, and they were the most important words I'd ever write. Not only because they gave me hope, but I knew they would give a lot of other people hope as well. And that's one of the reasons why being a writer is so important to me. It's the ability to touch other people, to change their lives, or to change, to affect them in that way. It meant a lot to me. I remember getting a lot of emails from readers. It really meant a lot. And speaking of that, while I was going through all this, my biggest fan, actually my only fan at the time, my mother, was also diagnosed with cancer. It was stage 4, and it was inoperable. There was nobody in this world who wanted me to become a writer or an author more than her. In fact, she was the one who gifted me with her love for the written word. And no matter what she was going through, the chemo, the disappointing scans that kept showing her disease progressing, she would always ask me, "How's that book coming?" She was so excited about this book and couldn't wait to read it. I remember at one point after I finished my first draft, I asked if she wanted to have a look. And she said, "Oh no, I want to wait till it's ready. I want to enjoy every word of it." So I got back to work on it. As I did, something finally dawned on me, that my first novel could actually be my last. We really didn't know, at that point what was going to happen with me. So we were both kind of fighting for our lives together, me and Mom. And that scared the hell out of me. But the thing was, it didn't stop me, because I wouldn't let it. In fact, now it seemed my resolve to become published was stronger than ever. Unfortunately, little did I know that my battle was only beginning. I found that out after spending a year facing one rejection after another from just about every agent in New York and beyond. I can't really say how many there actually were because I stopped counting at 100. As some of you already know, it's not a terribly uncommon experience in this business. A lot of the agents I queried never even bothered responding, and I was pretty sure many never even read the pages that I'd sent them. For the ones that did, it seemed the message was pretty clear, that my book wasn't marketable. They weren't interested in it. Sorry, Not For Us was starting to feel like my middle, last, and first names. It was heartbreaking, and it was discouraging, but I refused to give up. I couldn't. I'd already struggled through so much to get this novel written. I put my heart into it, and I wasn't going to stop now. But by June of 2010, it seemed pretty clear I was spinning my wheels and getting nowhere. Out of desperation, and as a last-ditch effort, I decided to upload my book to Amazon Kindle's publishing program. Back then, the program was just getting off the ground, so nobody really knew much about it. But at that point, I figured I had nothing left to lose. I would let the people who really mattered, the readers, make that decision for me. And whatever their decision was, I'd live with it. At least I'd know I'd given myself a fair shot. So I hit the ground running. I learned everything I could about promotion. I worked tirelessly, sometimes up to 6 hours a night, trying to promote and put the word out about my book. For the first few months, there wasn't much of a payoff. But I don't think I was expecting one that soon. I still wasn't willing to give up anyway. The thing is, I believed in that book, and I knew that despite what the agents had told me, despite the fact I could not get it published, I had something worthwhile. And for me, that was enough. And I also knew if I could just get the chance to get it into the reader's hands, I could finally get my chance. Finally, in September, I got my answer. Out of nowhere, While the Savage Sleeps began moving up the bestsellers list. And in time, it reached number 1 in its genre. My book, the one that nobody wanted to publish, the one that no agent wanted to represent, eventually passed up 2 of Stephen King's current releases at the time. I'm sure you can imagine what that felt like. I can tell you that there are few moments finer than the ones that bring validation for holding firm to your beliefs, even after everyone tells you those beliefs aren't worthwhile. And this one told me that my perseverance had paid off. Unfortunately, my mother was never able to see me discover that. She passed away before the book was done. That was a hard one for me. I knew she would have been so proud and so excited, maybe even more than I was. That's how moms are. But I moved on. 3 surgeries later, after my health began to steadily improve, I found my stride and I kept writing. Are you seeing a theme here? In December of 2011, I released my second novel, The Lion, the Lamb, and the Hunted, a psychological thriller. Within a few months of the book's release, it moved into the upper tier of Amazon's top 100, becoming their 7th highest selling novel out of more than 1 million available nationwide. It was also a bestseller in the UK and Germany. Within 3 months, my sales had pushed well into the 6-figure mark, making me one of the top grossing independent authors for the year. Suddenly, movie studios, publishers, and yes, literary agents were contacting me. I can still remember the day my book made it into the top 10, taking a deep breath and saying, "Look, Mom, we made it."
Aww.